Hello and welcome to Tech for Non-Techies, the only podcast that demystifies the fast-growing technology sector. I'm your host, Sophia Matveeva, Chicago-based MBA and tech entrepreneur. My aim here is to give you the skills, knowledge and confidence to find opportunities in the tech sector, whether that's through founding a company, getting a dream job, or bringing a fresh perspective to your work. Hello, smart people. I'm literally grinning from ear to ear. I was about to sit down and record this podcast, and then I got a message from one of my closest friends saying that she got a job. She got the job that she'd been going for in this very impressive fintech company, really big, important fintech company. And so we just had a little Zoom celebration and it was fab. And she's going to be a fantastic guest actually for Tech for Non-Techies after she gets started, so she can tell us about what they do and how all of that stuff works. But isn't it just wonderful when your friends succeed and then it feels like your success? So anyway, I hope you are doing well wherever you happen to be. I am continuing my life of pleasure and scandal in the Côte d'Azur, which I recommend to everybody. At some point when London and New York are open for business again, I'm going to dive back into the hustle and bustle of city life. But for now, the beach, the sun, and amazing French food are keeping me quite happy. This week, we have the latest intake of the new students for the What Non-Technical Founders Really Need to Know About Tech course. We had our orientation on Monday, and I'm really impressed by the smart, interesting, and ambitious students I have working with me. So if you're listening and you've just joined the course, I'm impressed. Speaking of the course, I want to give you a quick lesson from it today, this week. We're going to cover what developers do because I think it's going to deepen your understanding of technology, both from the point of the products that you use and from the businesses that make them. Because this is what we do here. We talk about how tech products like apps, sites, and algorithms get made. And we talk about the business models behind them. Because if you know that, then essentially lots of opportunities open up to you. My aim, as I tell you many times, is not for you to become developers or coders. Do that if that's what you want to do, but I'm not pushing you to do that. What I do think is important is for you to understand how tech products get made and the business models behind them. Because if you know that, then you can work with people successfully. You can start companies, you can make good investments, or you can be the go-to digital savant in your organization. All of that sounds pretty comfortable to me. In today's economy, the transferable skills that you need are digital skills. Almost every company is now a tech company. So even if you work in professional services, so for example, if you're a lawyer or an accountant, at minimum, you need to understand your clients, and most of your clients, many of your clients are going to have a really serious digital aspect to them. But also, if you're a lawyer or an accountant, many of your processes are being digitized too. Your data is also being used, your client's data is being used, so you do need to have an understanding of this stuff. So today we're going to cover what developers do, and this knowledge, it's a foundational kind of knowledge. So with this knowledge, you will be able to understand a lot more about how apps and sites get made. So today is more about how apps and sites get made rather than about AI and algorithms. So basically, developers write computer code to make the design come alive. We've got quite a few episodes on design. If you haven't listened to them yet, go find them. So we've got design for technology. We've got an intro to UX design for non-techies. They're both earlier episodes. Go and listen to them. But essentially, when somebody has an idea, so you have an idea for a product, the first people you're going to work with are going to be designers and not developers. There are plenty of episodes where I talk about that and where we have expert designers talking about that. Once you have a prototype, so once your design has been created and tested, you need to start working with developers. The vast majority of apps will need to have a front end and a back end. And those will need to be created by developers. And the front end and the back end are both necessary for most web apps and mobile apps. So what is a front end? A front end is something that you have interacted with literally to listen to this podcast. So it is the bit of the computer that you touch with your hand, that you see with your eyes, or in the case of Amazon Alexa, that you interact with using your voice. So literally a front end is a computer that interacts with humans. And by computer, I mean app. So literally, if you can touch it, if you can touch that bit of the app, that means it's a front end. And I'm assuming you're a human. So if you're a human and you're listening to this, then essentially what you're doing is you're interacting with front ends of apps and websites. So backend. The backend is a computer that only talks to other computers. So you, as a human, unless you're a backend developer, you're never going to interact with a backend. By the way, you will hear the words server, backend, and API used interchangeably in the tech world. They're not actually the same thing, and I don't have the time, literally just on this podcast, to go into what they do. We do cover that in the non-technical founders course, but for the purposes of this episode, you just need to know that servers and APIs are all to do with the backend. So, what is the backend? The easiest way to explain this is that the backend is like the infrastructure of your house. So, without the infrastructure, your product can't exist. If the walls of your house are shaky, if the foundation of your house is shaky, no amount of interior design is going to save you. So continuing with our house analogy, front-end developers are painters, decorators, and interior designers. They make the home usable and pleasant. So let's continue our house analogy a little bit further, because I don't want you to discount the value of the front end because you think, what's a bit of paint? That doesn't matter. No, it does matter. So first of all, we're all visual creatures and beautiful design is important, but we've also talked about user experience design being about usability. So if you have a fantastic foundation, you have a very well-coded back end, but the front end isn't easy to use, or there are lots of bugs in the front end, then your users are not going to be able to interact with the server, with the backend. So for example, imagine you have a house with a solid roof and a solid foundation and solid thick walls. So that's all very good. But in your house, literally your toilet is in your living room and then there are no walls around it. Do you think people are going to want to come to your house and just, do whatever it is they're going to do on their toilet in the living room? Would you want to invite them over? No. And I tell you this from personal experience because I actually dated somebody who just had their loo in their bedroom with no walls. I literally never stayed at this man's house. It was terrible. Anyway, going back to computers, you usually need a front-end developer and a back-end developer. I want you to know this because you will often hear the words full stack developer. So people who say that they're full stack developers essentially say that they can build your front end, so that's the computer that you as a human are interacting with, and the bit of the computer that only other computers interact with. So a back end interacts with the front end and it interacts with other backends. So imagine your house analogy. So the front end has to interact with the back end in a way that the paint has to go on the solid walls. You don't just have paint sitting around by itself. That's not particularly useful for your house. So the front end and the back end must coexist, and obviously they must interact. But I would say that beware of hiring full stack developers. Usually somebody who says that they're a full stack developer, usually they're good at one thing, but not the other thing. So in general, a full stack developer is somebody who trained as a back-end developer and is now wanting to retrain or skill up to a front-end developer, or vice versa. In my experience, it's better to have a specialist for the back end and a separate specialist for the front end. Okay, so that's about hiring. Now, let's talk about workflow. It's important that you know that building a back end takes longer than the front end. But imagine, it's just like building the house's foundation is going to take longer than installing a bathroom. And what's frustrating is when you're the non-technical person, essentially when you can't really see the back end, that's not something that you can see or interact with, especially at the beginning. You are spending money on this and time is being spent on this, and literally there's nothing that you can see. So especially when a startup or a product is in that stealth mode, it can get a bit scary. But you know what? I don't know, have a drink. That's just the way it goes. So the foundation takes some time to build. Backend developers, as a result, end up costing more. So the work that they're doing tends to be more complicated and it takes longer. Because of that, they need to have more training to be good at their jobs. In comparison, front-end developers need less training and their job is generally easier and generally takes less time. So front-end developers generally cost less. Now, if you are going to be hiring developers and you don't have a technical background, I don't recommend that you go and hire developers by yourself, because you're probably going to get some things wrong. If you get everything right, that's just blind luck. And if you get everything right, then just start playing the lottery. Clearly you've got the lucky charm. My advice would be to work with a product studio. And I've actually written an ebook about how to hire your product team and go from idea to app. I can put that in the show notes. But the reason why I want you to understand that back-end developers cost more than front-end developers is when you're making hires, you do want to understand what the breakdown of what you're getting is. So who are you getting in your team? If you're hiring developers and designers, how many designers, how many hours are you going to get? What is the output? And you do want to have an understanding of essentially who costs what. I just find that a useful exercise for your own product development. Okay, so when you're working with a product team, I want you to understand the work cycle. Because if you're going to be hiring a product team, you need to work with them effectively. And that's basically what I teach in the non-technical founders course. Because it's all about how do you work with the right people to co-create a product with them. As a non-technical person, you're not going to build the code, but also even people who can build the code, they're not going to then be designers. It's all about collaboration. Good products are made by a bunch of different people collaborating. So how does this work? So first there is an idea. Then the idea gets tested. There is some market research going on. There are lots of episodes that I've done on design and research that you can find earlier on. Okay, then designers work with you to create a prototype. After that, after your prototype has been created and tested, you're going to work with developers. Your first developer is going to be a back-end developer. Your back-end developers build the back-end. Then the front-end developers start working. So it's not that the front-end developers have to start working only once the back-end is built. It's just front-end developers need less time to do what they're going to do. So if a back-end developer is going to take 6 weeks to create something and a front-end developer's portion of that is only going to take 2 weeks, well, you figure it out. Obviously, you don't necessarily need them right at the beginning. So you go from idea to design to back-end to front-end. Then your thing needs to go through some testing, some quality assurance. Then you release it. And then you need to make sure that some people use it. After you analyze how they use it, then you can get more ideas to improve your design. So this is quite a lot of thick, heavy, techie info. I understand this. So well done for listening to this. you might want to listen to this again and take some notes. If you want to go deeper, then that's what the What Non-Technical Founders Really Need to Know About Tech course is all about. That's what we do. That's where I teach you the process of how to go from idea to a live product and how to work effectively with developers, designers, and other people involved in the process. Our next intake is in March, so you can start registering your interest if that's what you want to do. You can do that on our website, which is techfornontechies.co, or just see the link in the show notes if you're listening on Apple. But if you can't wait till March, I understand. I'm also an impatient person. I recently saw something that said, patience is a minor form of despair. I just think that's so true. Whoever said patience is a virtue? I mean, Jesus. Anyway, I digress. If you don't want to wait till mid-March, I feel ya. Our membership is open for enrollment all year round. So if you want to start learning straight away and get access to our weekly masterclasses and get live feedback and watch classes from Harvard Business School and Y Combinator alumni and some big tech execs, and get sessions with me, which is obviously fabulous, then check out our membership on techfornontechies.co/membership. So, my dear smarties, that's it from me. I'll speak to you next week. Stay fabulous.